I'm ready whenever you are.
Welcome to Sess Daily Podcast. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. And thank you guys for subscribing. We're blessed enough to have one of our favorite guests on, Don Neal. How are you doing tonight, sir? Bigfoot, Kentucky Bigfoot researcher, Don Neal. How are you doing tonight?
Good, fine, thank you, brother.
Absolutely, man. And is there any new reports that you have to report on here in Kentucky with sightings?
Well, as fall comes, and I don't know if it's because the creatures move more or people are getting out in the woods more. With all this heat lately, the COVID thing going on, and ticks are so bad and snakes and everything. We haven't had a lot of reports, but we do get some calls here and there, here and there. But we're getting ready for it to take off. October, November, it just like it busts loose.
Absolutely, man.
You start letting the deer hunters get out in the woods, getting ready, then we start getting reports coming in.
Yeah. I know Earl had a reported sighting here in eastern Kentucky in Perry County.
Wow. Wow. Was you saying about you heard something recently somewhere near you?
Yeah, it actually sounded like a cat, but it wasn't. There wasn't a cat there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
man. And I
Wow.
know that they can mimic other animals and stuff. They got the intelligence
Wow.
to mimic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they'll make a scream, that I've heard many people explain that like a woman screaming in pain, like a woman crying out. Now, of course, a cat will do that too, but that people that report it talking about the longevity of the call and how much lung capacity it would take. You can separate that from the and I've been in the woods and heard a bobcat start screaming, and it'll make you come down out of a tree stand if you're not ready for it.
Well, my dog, I got a German Shepherd dog, man. It didn't chase. It didn't try to go after whatever it was or anything. And if it was a cat, my dog would have tried to chase after it. So that tells you something right there as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it sounded pretty big too, man. It sounded like you could hear it move through the brush and stuff. It was a creek below my house. You could hear it moving the brush and stuff, man. It wasn't very long. It was about 1 or 2 minutes.
I heard a scream one time in Ohio County, Kentucky.
I've never heard
One,
a scream, unfortunately.
yeah, one time, just one time. But when it first took off, I thought cat. And again, the same story I was just telling. It was as it went on so long, and then it started having a shrill, crackling voice at the end. I thought, no, that's not a cat. But I've heard that one time where I've had hoops and growls and howls and all of that. But I had a scream one time, and it was. I got to agree with the people. Say it's like a woman in agony. But you could tell it wasn't a feline. It wasn't a cat sound. And I've heard bobcats. I've heard coyotes. Make their sounds, and this was different. But it went so long. I want to say it went 6 seconds or longer, just continuous. But that I'd rather hear howls and hoops than hear that scream.
Yeah, my dad has killed bobcats and stuff. He hunts and stuff, and he would know the sound of a bobcat and stuff. And he said he didn't know what sound it was. He said I don't even know what that is. And he's a preacher and stuff, just like you. I don't I think he believes Bigfoot is an ape.
Hmm. That just made me think too. We had a report from a tugboat captain on the river, Green River, I believe it was. And they, when they go, you ever see a tugboat go down the river, they got that big giant, big light, and they're shining bank to bank. They're looking for boats and anything in the water to dodge. And they spotted something on the bank moving, and it looked like a gorilla to them. And I read this report somewhere. I don't think it was on the KBRO, but anyway, the thing went up the bank. So the captain, was watching and looking, and then all of a sudden it starts screaming like a woman. That's how they explained to some of the crew members. It's screaming like a woman being killed, is how they said it. So they're capable of doing that screaming sound. And again, I've heard one that I'm pretty sure was that, and I'd rather not hear that. I don't care to hear the whoop and the long male call blast. That's pretty cool, but I don't like the screaming part. But that's just me.
I don't think too many people would, man. I bet there's a lot of police calls think that somebody's like getting hurt or something, and it's really
Yeah,
just Bigfoot.
yeah. Well, I see. You just keep hitting right on. You're hitting it right on the nail. I know that in all the books, I've got a library of books, Bigfoot, here in my office, and some of those books I know I've read. The police were called out. Somebody thought somebody was being murdered, or thought somebody was screaming for help. And they thought it was a woman in distress. So that's literally recorded in books. It's written down. So that's a real possibility. They didn't say it was a hoop, or they didn't say it was a howl. They said it was screaming like somebody being murdered. I mean, you hear that. That's an important point I like to bring. I've loved, and I've been studying here lately. I love when Bigfoot incidents coincide, and to me that adds legitimacy to the reports. So here we are talking about Bigfoot scream, and you thought you heard a scream like a cat. I've heard one time in my life. The tugboat captain heard the scream. They thought of like a woman being killed. And then right over there in those books on my shelf, there are stories. When things like that, when 2 or 3 or 4 things happen in different places and they all coincide, I like that. That adds legitimacy. So I've been I did a little bit of a talk about it at one of our KBRO expeditions, but I love it when Bigfoot sightings coincide. And I'll give you an example. Last year at this time of the year, I'll get the dates pretty close. I didn't look it up before the show. September, woman from Hancock County, Kentucky. She was a businesswoman, and she was traveling from Hancock County, some of your viewers may know, from Hallsville to Owensboro, Highway 60. Everybody down here knows where that is. And she and her son, I believe, her brother, she and her brother, 2 witnesses, in the car going down the road. In the medium, they see eye shine. Of course, down here in West Kentucky, first thing we think, that's a deer. You got to slow down because deer's just everywhere. She starts slowing down and realizes the eye shine is like 7 feet up in the air on this medium that separates the road. So as she's slowing down, she says, do you see that? And then they see 2 more smaller sets of eyes lower to the ground. And as her headlights hit it, these are 2 what she considers now to be juvenile Bigfoot, or smaller ones, and they were running around playing in the median. And when her lights hit them, they ducked their head and would cover their eyes. But the tall one just stood there and just watched and eyed her as she drove by. She slowed down very slow and went by. So she tells me the exact spot where it is on Highway 60 between Hallsville and Owensboro. And I know the place very well. I know exactly where it's at. So that was on I believe the 9th of last September. And today's the 28th. So I believe it was 2 weeks later, somewhere around this time, 26th, 27th, 28th, I get contacted by another lady. Guess what? She's a businesswoman. She lives in Hallsville. She was on her way to work in Owensboro. Same road, Highway 60, not hardly 5 miles down the road. And she said, I saw Bigfoot this morning. I know I saw Bigfoot. And it was, as she come up the road, she looked on the side of the road, and a steep bank goes up about 30 feet on the side of the road. And this thing was going up the bank, and it was using its hands and grabbing limbs as it climbed up. She said, I watched it go right up that bank and top the bank and walk off. And I said, did you know about my other report 2 weeks ago from the same road? She said, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they're within 2 weeks on the same highway, not 5 miles apart, 2 sightings. And that's to, I don't know, that's gold to me. That gives legitimacy again. It confirms that there was a creature moving across that road and saw by 2 different people who didn't know each other. They didn't know about each other's reports. Matter of fact, they were both blown away when they found out the incident happened just 5 miles apart. And they said, oh, I'm glad to hear that, because maybe people, believe me a little bit more. So I love that. And I've had so many incidents, and I'm making me a map, and I'm pinpointing a map of when I go to a report, and then I find other reports that are close proximity. And I'm gonna come up with a little theory about when Bigfoot sightings coincide. Can I share some more of those with you?
Absolutely, man. This is golden content right here.
We had a gentleman contact us and contact me. This may be 5-6 years ago. Again, I didn't prepare and get everything out, but it's in Ohio County, Kentucky, and they live on the banks of a rough river, which is actually a creek, but we call a rough river up here. It's not big like the Green River or the Ohio River, but rough river's a pretty winding, dark, scary looking place. The Rough River is along the the way as it meanders through the county. The man lost his, if I can get this straight, he lost his calf, a calf, and they was looking for the calf. His dad lost a calf. So they looked around the property for a long time, and they couldn't find it. They searched the fields and everywhere and said, this is a mystery where this calf has gone. So he told his dad, let's go to the end of your property, back here at the end of your farm on the banks of the Rough River. And his dad said, well, it wouldn't have went that far. It wouldn't have got off way down there. But they went, and they found the calf. And it was laying there, and it had been beaten. I remember the guy say it looked like somebody had took a sledgehammer and just beat it, broke every bone, every rib. The backbone was just pulverized like something. And the insides was tore open, and it was eaten, but there was no teeth marks. There was no claw marks. It was just laid open, and the insides were gone. But the main thing is it was pulverized. I'll never forget the guy saying like something had just beat it and broke every bone. 1 year later, the son, he's a grown man, he's got a farm right next to his dad's farm. He ends up missing a 400-pound hog. They looked around the property. They both own two big farms next to each other. And his dad said, remember last year when we looked for that calf and we found it back there on the bank? He said, well, yeah. He said, let's go back there and look. And both their properties went way back. And their property line was the Rough River. And across that, I believe, is in a separate county. So sure enough, they went back there and looked, and he said, you know what? He said, Mr. Neal, we found that 400-pound hog in the same shape as we found the calf. It was beaten. Its ribs were broken. Its back was broken. It was beat, just pulverized. He kept using that word. The insides were eaten. I believe one of the legs may have been gone. But anyway, two farms next to each other, 1 year apart, loses a calf, and then the next year loses a 400-pound hog. And they were both dragged to the banks of the Rough River, and they were both just beaten till their ribs were broken and the backbone all the bones was just shattered in pieces. That's when Bigfoot sightings coincide. That, by the way, the son, I still speak to him today, and he recently had 12 goats, and he lost one. He went out one day and there was 11, and he thought there's no way he could get out. And I've seen the pen, a picture of it. He's got a pretty high pen. It's maybe 8-10 feet high, pretty good thick fencing. It's a pretty good opening for just 12 goats. And he couldn't figure how that goat got out. So he even did some more adding, made it a little stronger, and he came out and he had 10 goats. And I think at last count, he may have lost 5 or 6 goats. And the only thing he could figure, something was taking them over the top of the fence and taking them out of there. And so he wondered if it was still connected. Of course, now along with this, he's heard some growls. He's heard some moans. He's heard activity on his property. But anyway, I just think that's amazing. When 1 year apart, they lose a calf and a 400-pound hog. You know, something's going on, and that confirms it. One confirms the other. And I have one other location, and this is mind-blowing. I literally have a map, and it's where 3 counties meet here in the area I live in. There's 3 counties, and they're within this map, maybe a 15-mile circle. And I have 8 reports in a 15-mile circle in those 3 counties. And there's, let me think about how much I want to tell. There are some other researchers that they, and I know of them and we get along, but they have an area that I believe we ought to be respectful to each other, especially me being a Christian and a minister. You know, I don't need a bad name. And so I don't go on their property, but they've got a real red hot spot. And it's a good spot, and I wish more power to them. And but I do some research near there because it's a big county, and I research near there. To get to the story, since I know of their activity and the place where they research, and I never have been on that property and won't ever be. I want to just make it plain. But I got to talking to an old farmer who had, somebody told me that talked to him. He said he had seen something. So when I was talking to him, he said, I was fishing along the banks of the Green River. And I know without a map, this won't make a lot of sense, but he said it, but back towards there's a certain mountain, or there's an area of 3 or 4 mountains there that we have here in Western Kentucky. So that's their research area. Let me just say it that way. He says, when I'm fishing on the bank of the Green River, many times, he said, just I'm looking down, up and down the bank. He said, I have seen a big gorilla walking along the edge of those woods down there where those mountains are. I said, really? Because he has no idea that that's a research area for Bigfoot used by another research group. And they've had activity there. And I said, well, you know, what makes you think it's I'm sorry, I said gorilla. He said it was a bear. The gorilla comes in here in a minute. He said it's a bear that walks upright. And I said, you know, bears don't usually do that. He said, well, I didn't think so either, but what else could it be? But he said that thing looks 7 foot tall. He said, I'm seeing it from about 300 yards. And he said, it'll walk along the wood line from the river, and it'll go so far. And he said, then it'll walk back. He said, I've saw it on more than one occasion. And he said, I think, man, that's the biggest bear I've seen walking on 2 legs. He said, I tell everybody. So now take this map and put this mountain where these guys research, and 300 yards down the bank of the river that's not on their area. This is on some farmland. This farmer, this old man is fishing, and he sees that Bigfoot. So there's 2. So then I was getting gas here in the town where I live, a little country town of Sacramento, Kentucky. And the girl pumping the gas said, you're that guy that does Bigfoot research. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you need to talk to my grandfather. He saw Bigfoot. And I said, where at? When she tells me where at, it's not a quarter of a mile down the banks of the Green River from where this old fisherman just told me he kept seeing. You see where I'm going? So start with this Bigfoot location where there's a research area, 300 yards down the bank of the river, the fisherman sees it, and then not a quarter of a mile right down the same river bank, this guy was fishing. So the story was this grandfather was fishing one day, and there's a place where 2 rivers meet, and he was on we call it the point, and he hears noise behind him, and he turns around and looks, and he sees this big 7-8 foot tall hair covered thing that had the face of a caveman, and it's looking around the tree looking at him. He said, I knew it wanted my fish. And the old people are cool. This old timer guy said, you ain't getting my fish. And he just kept fishing. I mean, is that cool? You know, just he didn't know what it was, but it wasn't going to get his fish. You know, some people don't believe that, but I know old country folks, they just didn't care. He wasn't going to take his fish. And he said that it looked for several minutes, and he said, you know, shoo, get away, leave me alone, I'm fishing. I don't know why he didn't run. I don't know why he wasn't scared. He just an old timer, didn't care. Whatever it was, wasn't going to get his fish. And I'm past the point of caring whether people believe stuff like that or not. I love these old timers. They don't care. Listen, they didn't care. He said eventually he looked and it would go back a little ways behind another tree. It stayed behind trees and would look around. And then next thing you know, it was another tree. And they did that until it got way off in the distance and it finally went away. Guess which direction it went? Back towards that research area, back towards where the fishermen. So now I've got 3. I've got 3, a research area that I know is a hotbed, though I've never been on it, but I know the researcher and I trust them. And they tell some great stories.
Will they be on the podcast, or have I already had them on the podcast?
No. This is a whole different group. They're not with us, but they're good researchers. And I don't think they would be pretty private about their area, their spot. I'm trying not to use the name they use, or I'd give it away. But I know it's a red hot location. Then I got a fisherman, and then I got this guy, this old guy. I told her, I said, I'd like to speak to your grandfather. He was in the hospital at this time. She said, I'll see if I can set it up. And before I could see him, the old fella died. But she had asked him about it. She went and said, I got a minister friend in our town who's a Bigfoot researcher, and he wants to know if you'd share that story. And he said, if I get out of this hospital, I'd gladly share it. But she asked him again, Granddad, are you sure that's what you saw? He said, I have no doubt. He said, I guarantee it's what I saw. And he died a few days later. So his deathbed confession was he absolutely saw a Bigfoot, you know, and he's getting ready to pass away. Time for the truth to come out then. So now keep that in mind. I got these 3 spots. So my brother, I have a brother who works in agricultural here. He works in a large factory here where they bring their corn and wheat, and they've got big silos, and he helps to offload the trucks. And anyway, he said, I've got a fella you need to talk to, bub. And I said, okay. And it's a farmer. Now, there's these 3 areas. Again, I like to tell it real simple where people understand. So here I've got 1, 2, 3 places, 2 sightings, 1 research area where there's been several sightings. So I go speak to this farmer, and this farmer lives about 2 miles this way along the banks of the Green River, not 2 miles away. Here's number 4. I'm talking about when Bigfoot sightings coincide. And I'm talking to this old farmer, and people's got to understand. You got to be from Kentucky to understand. These old farmers and people, look, they're just trying to live. They're farming. They don't have time for nonsense. They don't play games. You know what I'm talking about. We're from Kentucky. So this guy says, well, so for about 10 years, here's where I got gorilla from. He said, I've had this runaway gorilla on my farm. I said, you what? He said, yeah. He said, when I'm out on the combine and been combining, he said, if I'm out here in the field, it comes out of the edge of the woods and it'll stand there and watch me. He said, it's the biggest thing you've ever seen. He said, but you know, it looks like a man in the face. And he said, if I take my combine and go anywhere near where it is, it backs off into the wood. He said, I've seen it every season now, every planting season and every harvest season. I see it every year for about the last 10 years. And I said, what makes you think it's a gorilla? He said, what else could it be? See, these guys don't know. They don't believe Bigfoot. They're not watching Bigfoot shows. What, you know, to them, it's an upright bear walking 300 yards, or it's a gorilla escaped from because I said, where do you think a gorilla came from? He said, I guess it escaped from some zoo. You're talking some 85, 90-year-old man. He thinks it's, if I said Bigfoot, he goes, what's that? And so for 10 years, he's been seeing this creature that watches him when he's on his combine. I just want to add an interesting point. We have guys down here in western Kentucky. They like to hunt from combines. You can be out in the field and combine deers come out and feed all around you. They're not afraid of them combines. They won't get in front of one to get run over, but they will eat and feed. So a lot of farmers park their combines and leave. Those deer will gather around it because they know there's food. They've associated that with food. So there's a lot of these guys that try to hunt from a combine. I think that's interesting. Is this Bigfoot watching for deer to come around the combine? He's looking for a food. But now here I am on my little map. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I talked to some people in that local area, and I just go up. Sometimes I just meet people. I say, hey, do you believe in Bigfoot? Sometimes you get laughed at, but you'd be surprised how many people say, well, I've heard some funny things. But up and down the road, going to this farmer's house, there's about 4 miles of just nothing but woods. It's an old strip mines area and some woods. And I found out from 2 or 3 of the people that live in that area, in that neighborhood, they said, well, these woods behind our house are called the Screaming Woods. And I said, why is that? And they said, for about the last 30 years or so, it ain't nothing to hear loud screams coming from these woods, loud howls, unusual. So it's not no animal we've ever heard. And so we nicknamed it the Screaming Woods. So you just keep adding to the puzzle. You see what I'm doing? I got the old man that's fishing and said, you can't get my fish. I got the other man fishing that sees an upright bear. I got this hot research area that another group has. And then I got this farmer on his combine who says he sees a walking gorilla. And then I've got neighbors up and down this road. And all of this fits in that 15-mile radius. And I'm not done yet. I had a report on the KBRO site, a lady that was a nurse. She's going home from Hartford, Kentucky to her home in Centertown, Kentucky, along the Rough River. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It just keeps joining together like a puzzle. And she sees something run alongside the road again. I know it sounds repetitive. You think deer. That's what I think. If I'm driving down the road, and see eye shine, I'd hit my brake and slow down because you're going to hit a deer. Probably the number one insurance claim in all of Western Kentucky up here is us running over deers. We're overcrowded. She slows down and she says, out walks this baby Bigfoot. She said it couldn't have been 3 foot tall. It's a great story. It's on our KBRO website. If I may throw that in here, www. Kentucky Bigfoot, you spell out the whole name, KentuckyBigfoot.com. We have listings of all of our Bigfoot reports, over 300 reports. And out of 120 counties here in our state of Kentucky, we have sightings from 98 of 120 counties. Bigfoot is all over the state of Kentucky. And so anyway, she sees this baby Bigfoot. Now this woman, we're talking about an old country woman. I love them. People can make fun of them. I just love it. They don't get excited. I said, what did you do? She said, I slowed down so I wouldn't hit it. And she said, it stood in my headlights. And she said, it puckered its lip like it was going to cry. It looked like a young kid who's going to cry. She said, I knew immediately he was lost. He had got separated from his parents. That's how she assumed it. She said it would look to the left and look to the right and looking and said, standing there in my headlights, it didn't know which way to go. And she said, I thought about getting out of the car and going to it. She said, but then I thought, well, if there's parents nearby, I probably, a mama bear is real protective of its cubs. And she said, I thought maybe I better not get out in case the mom and daddy's here. But now think about it. She said his bottom lip was quivering like it was going to break down and cry. And it just looked scared. And she said, I felt so sorry for the poor thing. I love it. And so eventually about 2 minutes, she sat there with her lights on. This was later at night. She was working late shift as a nurse. And it finally ran on off the road. So, I could just keep going. I can keep going. It's amazing. So, I've got the old man that said you can't get my fish, the man who sees the bear, the red hot research area, the farmer on the combine. You're getting the point. He sees a gorilla. The people call it Screaming Woods. And this woman sees There's 6, and I'm not done yet, but I'll cut this off for a minute and take a breather. I've got all these reports in a 15-mile radius. I'm telling you what, there's Bigfoot in this area, more than one big family unit, and they're moving around. And this gives legitimacy because all of these people, the old dad who died, the granddad who died on his deathbed saying he saw Bigfoot, did not know. I asked the guy who fished that saw the bear, I said, you know, and I mentioned his name. He said, no, never heard of him, don't know him. They don't know each other. You know, the old farmer who saw the gorilla did not know the guy that died. And these people are telling a story of a creature in their area. I mean, what are the odds? I love it.
Absolutely, man. And if you think about it, the same thing is happening here in Knott County. There was a sighting probably less than even a quarter of a mile, man. And then I heard heard that noise from. What I meant was I heard the noise from less than a quarter of a mile where that sighting was. And what really caught my ear is you're talking about deers. That is actually government land and where people deer hunt at.
Wow.
And there's fish there as well.
They've got to have food to eat. You know, we noticed, I didn't come up with this, somebody smarter than me did, but we believe absolutely they follow the waterways. They've got everything that lives on planet Earth's got to have water. And you would be surprised if you did a study of all the sightings, and they're near lakes, ponds, streams, or rivers, almost always. You can find a Bigfoot report. I'll tell you what, we had a high school in Owensboro, Kentucky, which is 30 miles north of where I am. And I went over and spoke to at a high school. A gentleman had a history class and geography class, and he wanted to hear about Bigfoot. And the reason why he had all of his students do a study of Bigfoot reports. Listen to this, and to put down what was the 4 or 5 main items that related to each Bigfoot report. It was just he was interested in Bigfoot, and I went and told some Bigfoot stories, and those young people, he said it was the quietest they'd ever been in an hour class. And I did 3 of the different classes, 3 hours. But he said he never heard them so still, and they were on the edge of their seats. But do you know what that group of kids did? They did a study and found out that every sighting had 3 things in what's the word I'm looking for? 3 things that were alike with each sighting. Number 1, it was near water. Number 2, it was near, many of them, caves, abandoned coal mines, or someplace where it could hide. And number 3, it was somewhere where there was abundance of wildlife. So, you know, they got to have food, they got to have water, and they got to have somewhere they can hide. And I believe they use, whenever they can, caves, underground. Here in Western Kentucky, and I know you do in Eastern Kentucky, when I go 4-wheeler riding up in the mountains in Harlan County, it's amazing how many of those holes we see going back in the mountain where they've dug in there. And, you know, they'll use that just like a bear will. Any opportunity to get out of the weather, to get out of the way, to get a place to hide. And so I absolutely believe that. So food, water, and a place to hide. But I myself happen to know it's always near water. They follow the waterways. They follow the creeks. But deer, I believe, is their number 1 food source. Their number 1 source of nutrition comes from, now they're opportunistic eaters. Good Lord, I've got reports up here. I broke down stories where they've eat possums and coon and roadside teal and deer, and they've eat skunks. There's a report of some men saw him chase a skunk, a Bigfoot chase a skunk in a pipe, and he reached in a pipe and got the skunk out and eat it. And when he got done, he took the skunk and rubbed it all over his body. Yeah, but imagine eating a skunk. I mean, so they've I've seen them eating people's vegetables out of their gardens. They've eaten bark off of certain trees. The story I heard from a hunter that got me into Bigfooting, it was walking across the field, grabbing some kind of a plant and pulling out of the ground, was eating the roots of it. They'll eat fish. They'll eat turkey. They're opportunistic feeder. But deer being, I'm rambling on here, but deer being their number 1 food source, I sincerely believe that.
Yeah, man, I definitely agree with that as well. I mean, actually, probably 85 to 90% of the sightings that Earl has reported here on the podcast have actually been around the lake here.
See? What is the name of that lake, by the way? I tried to remember the other day.
Carrsford Lake.
Yeah, right. And I told you I drove down by there one time on my way to Virginia. I went to Hazard. I love to drive and just take scenic routes. There's quicker ways from where I live I was going to Fort Lee, Virginia, but I just went to Hazard and took Highway 15 and went down there. And I remember passing that lake, and that's some squatchy looking area down there.
Yeah, that's not too far from. I actually live around the creek that goes into the lake.
That's cool.
The lake is not that far at all. Actually, it's about less than a mile. I mean, all the lake. I mean, I've been raised around the lake and stuff. I've never seen a Bigfoot, but who's to say that we will never see a Bigfoot? I would like to see a Bigfoot, but also would probably be scared as well.
Well, absolutely. And I always tell people they think you can't be a Bigfoot researcher if you haven't seen a Bigfoot. That's ridiculous. But I haven't had my daytime face-to-face sighting. I'm living for that day. I like to tell people I've had about every experience you can have related to Bigfoot. I can't remember. I've been screamed at and yelled and hooped at. I've heard their howls. I've seen their eyes shine. I've known they were in the woods surrounding me. I've heard them grunt. I've had rocks thrown at me, pine cones thrown at me. I had a tree pushed over by me. My scariest encounter, and heard it walk off bipedally. It took off one direction, and I stood up and walked away in another direction. Even though I had a 44 Magnum on my side, it startled me. I never heard him come up behind me, and I'm sitting there about 2 o'clock in the morning. It's pitch black. I'm sitting with my back next to a big tree, and I hear this boom behind me, and then I hear it start boom, boom, boom. Anyway, I found footprints. I found hair. I found scat. I've seen eye shine. I've just about every experience you can have, but I've not seen one. But now with my thermal camera, my FLIR, I got that back in 2009, I believe it was. I've had 3 experiences where I'm almost certain that I captured Bigfoot on the thermal, and that's exciting. That's a person's best way, I believe. Everybody's got their own opinions. I believe, of course, everybody can't afford one. I had to sell the farm to get, the old saying goes, to get mine back in 2009. But I've had 3 videos. I've got it on I've got a YouTube channel under D Neal, and I've got those thermal hits on there. And one is a head looking up from behind a brush pile, and it keeps looking. It's a pretty good size. And then one where 2 individuals stand out of the woods. But anyway, I'm looking for my daytime sighting, but I believe in Bigfoot because I've interviewed over 100 people since I've been doing this. Big men, small women, old people, young people, educated people, some that couldn't sign their names. God bless their hearts. People that own businesses and had money, and people that were just poor folks. And, over and over and over again, the same exact details of the same exact creature, maybe a little difference in color, but 7 to 8 foot tall, covered in hair except for the face, human looking face, long arms, swinging, elongated when it walks, turns at the waist. Over these people, if they're lying or they were all drunk or they were all high, there'd be some differences, but it's the same explanation, and I believe because of that.
Absolutely, man. And them pictures that you showed on the podcast back in, I believe July, was very impressive, man. Have you got any newer pictures that you can show on the podcast?
I don't have any I can show, and I'm sorry, I wasn't really prepared. A lot of things. Will be a full-time minister, pastor. My schedule just has been crazy, but hopefully I'll get some more together. A lot of people share stuff with me, and they don't want it. They just say, I'm going to share and show you this, but don't. But I've got some other stuff I can bring up. Did I ever show my footprints and hand cast and all that?
Yeah, from Thomas Shea, we actually had him on, and he showed us some of his prints as well. I don't know if you've seen that interview.
He's the greatest, man. He knows his stuff. When Cliff Barackman came to him and was impressed with his collection, he's got a great collection.
Yeah, Cliff is a very intelligent guy, and so is Thomas as well. And hopefully we will have Cliff on soon, man. His schedule is crazy.
Awesome. I was just thinking too, to people say, well, if they're hunting a deer, if deer is their number one food, how can they catch a deer? And I if you don't mind to talk about that subject for a minute, I've read one of the books I've read, a gentleman says he had a habituation site This is where he fed them over the years, and the Bigfoot would come around him, not right up close, but he could see them quite often. He would whistle, and they'd stick their head out and stuff. And if you want to believe that, but he had an opportunity one time. He was in the woods and he saw a deer running, and they had strategically, 3 or 4 of them had placed themselves, and they were chasing this. Is that the word I'm looking for? They were running this deer into a certain spot, and they did it. They worked together in unison, and they captured that deer. And he heard it screaming out, but it'd be over here, and then the deer would run its way, and there was one there. So they worked together in unison. Now that has been confirmed in other reports over the years from other people, that they have seen them work as a unit, work more than one, working together. So working together like that they can catch a deer. But one thing about Bigfoot that always amazes me is they must be just unbelievably fast when they need to be. I just listened to a report the other day. I watched a video right here, and this gentleman was sitting on a back porch. I wish I could remember what state this was in. He was early in the morning. He was visiting this people's cabin. He was sitting on the porch with no lights on, drinking coffee, with just dusky daylight, and there were some security lights on. And he sees something step out into the field, and he looks down there, and it's 7 to 8 foot tall, hair covered creature, and it's looking around. And he said, I don't believe it knew I was there. I was just sitting quietly on this porch with a cup of coffee in my hand in the dark. And he said the creature stepped out a little bit more, and directly, if I remember the story correctly, he said it must have been aware I was there. I don't know how, and they're amazing about that too. But he said it took off out across this open field, and the man said this. He said, I know it covered 180 yards. I believe he said in 6 or 7 seconds. Now that's unbelievable. And he said something a lot of Bigfoot witnesses say. He could see the legs really pumping as it was moving, but he said that the head, everything was solid glide. It didn't bob up and down. He said it just was like this, like it was on roller skates, like it was on a railroad track, just like this. That just amazes me. That blows my mind. I can't figure that out. There's some kind of locomotion they use. There's some kind of motion when they can pump those legs. He said it was in waist tall grass. He could see the knees coming up and down. So it was high stepping, I call it. And it was leaned forward in its body, but its head, think about that now. I mean, you couldn't do that. It stayed just like this, just smooth. But 180 yards in 6 or 7 seconds. I don't think the fastest, what are those football players? They run they do 100 yards in so many seconds. These things are unbelievable. They could catch a deer. I believe that. I believe that completely. And as a matter of fact, brings up another story I'm just thinking about. My wife has a friend. This lady's been her friend for 30 years, and she does taxes. She works for the U.S. Postal Service, but she does taxes. She's done our taxes for 25 years now, and a very intelligent lady, and she likes to raise horses. So she has some really nice horses, not just plow horses or work horses, but some nice show horses. And on a 180-acre farm, she allowed some loggers to come in and start logging some of the back property. It had never been logged, old timber. And her parents had passed away, so she let them log so much, maybe 100 acres. And so she started noticing activity. She started noticing gates being left open on her property. She noticed the horses were
Your sound went out for I can't hear you now. You can hear me? Oh, okay. I can't hear you though. Oh no, I can't hear you. I don't know. Oh man. Oh no, I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you. You can't hear me? Hmm. This is what happens with Zoom sometimes, guys. Uh, there we go. I can hear you now.
All right, got you. Can
Yeah,
you hear me?
you're not on video though. I can't see you.
Okay, I haven't touched anything. Is there anything I can do to fix that?
Just turn on your camera on the start video, I should say,
Okay, let me see. Start video. I don't see it.
on the Zoom screen.
Okay, start video. There we go. Let's see if that does it. There you go.
Yeah, man, I can see you. Uh,
Okay,
definitely.
where was I at in this story? How much did you hear of my story about the horses?
Uh, left in gates open, and after that, I didn't hear anything about
Okay.
the.
She allowed some after probably 100 years that the family had owned this farm. She allowed some logging to start. Her parents passed away, so she had 180 acres. She let them start logging on the back of the property. She never thought anything about it. Then the horses start acting up. So she noticed that for a while, but she didn't relate anything to it. So one day somebody called her and said, you need to come up here about 4 miles from the farm on the highway. There's been a wreck and 2 of your horses are dead. So she goes up there, and what happens is 2 of her horses had broke through an electric fence, had broke through the gate. They'd never done this before. And they ran over 4 miles straight through the woods. And when they hit the highway, a car hit them and totaled the car. Thank God it didn't kill the man, and killed both of her horses. And then as she began to do some investigating, she hired a tracker to come and see, because she was afraid there was a large cat or something. Something had caused them horses to run 4 miles. And when they were hit that highway, the man that hit them said they were running full speed ahead, like something was after them. She hired a tracker, and he said, I never saw bear tracks. I never saw cat tracks. But he said, I could see imprints. Something was on their trail for 4 miles and chased those horses until they got on the road and hit that car, totaled the car. Thank God it didn't kill the man. So she asked me to come to her farm and do some investigating. And when I went to the farm, I did see signs, Bigfoot signs, tree twists. I did see some possible tracks, nothing we could cast. And anyway, I only can surmise that she allowed the loggers to come in, and they upset and disturbed the woods where these creatures had been. I mean, I'm surmising here. I'm putting together a story. But those horses had been there for several years and never acted up till the loggers logged the back of the property. Then something scared those horses so much they broke through it shocked them, but they broke through the electric fence and tore down a gate and ran 4 miles. They were foam. They were just completely wet when they were hit, running, afraid of something that was chasing them. That's amazing. So this thing kept up with those horses.
Yeah, I mean, Bigfoot definitely is quick as lightning, man.
Yeah, amazing. That's just amazing. I did see. So I haven't been back to the property since then. She just wanted me to look, one time. But I did see several signs, tree twists, like I said, some prints and some pathways, pretty big pathways through the woods. So I believe Bigfoot's, for whatever reason, stirred those horses up and got after those horses. I don't know Bigfoot. I never heard of them eating horse meat, but they'll eat anything. They're opportunistic feeders. But I don't know.
Yeah. Do you believe that Bigfoot is half human and half ape?
Wow. A good question. I'm still, a famous thing. A thing I'm famous for saying is, the more you look for answers, all you do is find more questions. all I do know is I don't believe they're ape. I don't believe they're all ape. The people who have seen them close up, one of our closest witnesses at the KBRO was 18 inches away. He was inside of a truck, pickup truck, as a 14-year-old teenager, and the thing was on the other side of the glass of the truck looking at him. And in every instance where people have been close up, the thing they are going on about, you can't hardly get them to tell the rest of the sighting report because they tell you it looked like a human. It was so human. I've heard people say it looked like an American Indian. Another famous one, they'll say they look like a caveman. People, from drawings we've seen, nobody's seen a caveman real, but one story, a man said it had a long European-like face and nose. It had a nose like a European. So it's always a human-looking face. So anymore, I just don't believe they're ape. I can't tell you what they are. I don't know, but I don't believe they're just monkey. I don't believe they're ape anymore. They have an intelligence. They have a human-looking face. It's a great question. I don't know the answer to. I don't know what a Bigfoot is, but I know who made it. I know who its creator is. So I don't believe in monsters. I believe it is a created being. It's here like we are here. It's very unusual from us. But to answer your question, I don't really know. I don't know what they are, but I know they're human looking.
Absolutely, man. And definitely is great evidence. Bigfoot being real, and I believe Bigfoot is real, in my opinion. I know everybody's got their opinion on it.
I don't have to see one to believe. I absolutely believe, but I would like to see one to confirm all that I've heard. I know I've been surrounded by them. I've seen the eyes shine. I've had the tree pushed down by me. That's my most real experience, and heard it run off. I heard the tree falling wasn't so, amazing. Trees fall in the woods. This thing fell, and then I heard the boom, 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 boom as it ran off. A dear friend of mine, a fellow researcher of mine named Frank Keene. He's a good friend. He goes to my church now. He's a member of my church, and we go squatching together. And last
do you
year,
think he would be on?
Probably would. Yeah, I'll mention that to him. But he was with me last year, and we were at a Bigfoot hotspot location where over the years, KBRO and BFRO probably have 6 reports from this one area. It's in another county off from here. And that's a good place to go when we want to go squatching. It's a good place to go. You can walk in the woods a little ways. You can set you up a lawn chair and sit there and just listen. And you can hear another river. Guess what? Another river. It's not the rough river this time, but I'm telling you, I go squatching by the water. I always do. Maybe a little worthless secret to some, but it's my secret. Go near the water. But to get this story out, me and Frank is about 6'2", 6'3". He's a big old guy. I bet he's 280 pounds. He's a big fella, and got a big old beard. He looks like a mountain man. But he was standing by the river with a parabolic mic listening, and I was sitting in a chair by the campfire. And I'm telling you, Seth, it sounded like, if you can imagine somebody being able to throw a refrigerator, it sounded like a refrigerator hit in the middle of that little river, again, like a creek, but we call them a river. And it just made such a thud. And it was not a beaver's tail. I've heard beavers. I've been out fishing late at night, and a beaver scare you to death. This was like a refrigerator fell 50 feet out of the sky and hit that water. It thud. The waves came up to the bank. You could see the waves from it. And Frank come walking backwards, almost walked into the campfire because he was standing there right beside the water when it hit. Something to have that kind of strength to throw whatever it threw. It was just amazing. I mean, a person didn't do that. No animal did that. And I cannot explain to you, it was like something weighed 400 pounds hit that water. And the amazing thing about that is another fellow researcher named Don Atkins. He's with the BFRO. He lives here in the county I live in. So we get to go squatching a lot. Not a couple of years before that, me and him were sitting in the exact same spot. Here we go, coinciding incidents again. And across the river and into the woods, we were just sitting there about a couple hours. And it sounded like, again, somebody dropped a freezer. It just went thud and hit the ground. Just I can't say it shook the ground. but it was just unbelievable impact in those dark woods. No houses, no farms, no barns. It's old strip mine area, and there was nobody in there, no lights anyway. But I don't know, a person could drop something that big and it hit the ground. So something's in there throwing, tossing around things that weigh well over 200 pounds from the sound of it.
Wow, man. Bigfoot is definitely making their presence known.
Yeah, when they do that, you're probably disturbing them. They don't want you there. A lot of people say when you hear that, just leave. Well, we don't leave. This was on the other side of the little river, but we certainly wouldn't encroach upon their property. I wouldn't get any closer to them. I've had witnesses tell me they saw a Bigfoot and then they ran away, but they didn't know why they ran away because they were curious. They wanted to see more of it, and I never understood that until I had that one push the tree down by me. And I'm always amazed. I've been doing this research. I don't claim to be a brave man, but I'm out there to see one and have experiences, set up my audio recorders. And when that thing pushed the tree over and I heard it walk off, I just stood up and walked to my truck and started it and headed home. I was about 7 miles from home. And about halfway home, I remember stopping. I was going, why did I leave? What am I doing going home? I should have, but that thing they call fight or flight must have kicked in. And I just kind of, I wasn't unconscious, but subconsciously, I guess I just walked to my truck and left. I should have stayed there. I should have got my thermal camera, turned around on the other side of the tree and watched the hillside. But I just walked calmly to the truck and drove home. I'll never be able to explain that. I should not have left. But you just do funny things when funny things happen to you.
Absolutely, man. And definitely want to thank you for being on, man. We will definitely have you and hopefully Earl on at the same time in November.
That'd be great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. And I want to thank Don Neal, Kentucky Bigfoot researcher, for being on. More importantly, he is also a pastor as well.
For 50 years, I've been doing that.
Absolutely, man. Definitely want to thank Don Neal for being on. Y'all have a good night. And Don, you have a good night as well. And God bless you all.